Truth isn't harmless. Spoken at the wrong time, it doesn't free you, it destabilizes you. Truth is often treated as if it were harmless, as if facts flow through human lives without friction. People speak as though truth were a moral disinfectant, apply it and everything becomes clean. This belief is comforting, simple, and dangerously wrong. Truth is not neutral, it is force. And like any force, it reshapes whatever it touches, whether the mind is prepared or not. Every truth carries weight. The moment it enters consciousness, it begins reorganizing the inner world. Beliefs shift. Identifications crack, old structures weaken. This is why truth feels threatening even when it is accurate. It does not merely inform, it demands reconfiguration. To encounter truth is to be asked to change, and most people underestimate the cost of that request. The danger is not truth itself, but timing. A truth revealed too early functions like a medicine taken in the wrong dose. Instead of healing, it overwhelms the system. The psyche has limits. It requires spacing, containment, and integration. When truth arrives before the inner structure is ready, it destabilizes rather than clarifies. Confusion, anxiety, and fragmentation follow. Not because the truth was false, but because the mind had nowhere to place it. This is why people often regret moments of radical honesty. They look back and wonder why speaking what felt so real led to chaos instead of relief. The mistake was assuming that truth automatically liberates. In reality, liberation only occurs when truth meets preparedness. Without that readiness, truth behaves like pressure applied to a fragile surface. It exposes cracks rather than strengthening the whole. Truth is also never abstract. It is always personal. The same statement can heal one person and wound another depending on where it lands. This is because truth interacts with unconscious material. It activates memories, defenses, fears, and unresolved conflicts. What seems like a simple observation on the surface can detonate deep emotional reactions beneath it. That reaction is not random. It is the psyche responding to an intrusion it did not invite. This is why truth provokes resistance. People do not resist lies with the same intensity. Lies are easy to dismiss. Truth threatens identity. It challenges the stories people tell themselves in order to remain stable. When those stories are endangered, the mind reacts defensively. Anger, ridicule, dismissal, and moral outrage are common responses. These are not signs that truth failed. They are signs that truth landed, but the speaker is not immune to consequences. Speaking truth places responsibility on the one who speaks it. Once something is articulated, it cannot be taken back into silence. It becomes part of the external world, where it can be distorted, weaponized, or misunderstood. The speaker must then carry the social and psychological consequences of that exposure. This is a burden few people consider before they speak. There's also a subtle loss that occurs when truth is externalized prematurely. Inner realizations carry energy while they remain internal. They motivate change, reflection, and transformation. When spoken too soon, that energy dissipates. The truth becomes a statement instead of a force. What could have reshaped the personality turns into something merely discussed. The individual feels lighter in the moment, but weaker afterward. This is why silence has a function beyond fear. Silence can be a form of containment. It allows truth to mature, to integrate, to become embodied rather than announced. Contained truth reorganizes behavior quietly. It changes how a person moves, chooses, and responds. Spoken truth, by contrast, often seeks validation before it has earned stability. It looks outward instead of doing its work inward. The belief that truth must always be spoken is a modern illusion. In reality, discernment is required. One must ask not only is this true, but what will this truth do here now, in this mind? Without that second question, honesty becomes reckless. Truth is powerful precisely because it is not neutral. It alters inner and outer realities, whether the speaker intends it or not. And once released, it cannot be controlled. Only endured and integrated by whoever is strong enough to bear its consequence. Without demanding immediate understanding or relief, some truths aren't meant to be spoken yet because the mind hasn't finished shaping them. Modern thinking assumes that awareness is always progress. If something is real, it should be brought into the light. If something is felt, it should be named. If something is known, it should be consciously understood. This belief sounds mature, even enlightened, but it ignores a fundamental psychological reality. Consciousness has limits. Not every truth belongs there, at least not yet. The mind is not a single unified space. It is layered, stratified, and unevenly developed. Some truths arise from depths that operate by different rules than conscious thought. They are symbolic, emotional, and unfinished. When these truths are dragged into consciousness prematurely, they lose their form or become distorted. What could have matured naturally becomes flattened into words that cannot carry its complexity. Consciousness is a narrow channel. It can only process so much at once. When a truth exceeds that capacity, it does not integrate, it overwhelms. This is why certain realizations feel destabilizing rather than clarifying. The individual suddenly knows something they cannot live with, act on, or resolve. The result is paralysis, anxiety, or fragmentation, not growth. The truth itself is not the problem. Its placement is. There is a developmental order to psychological material. Some insights must be lived before they are understood. Some patterns must be endured before they can be named. When consciousness tries to dominate this process, it disrupts the natural timing of inner transformation. Instead of allowing meaning to emerge gradually, the mind demands immediate clarity. This demand often comes from impatience, fear, or the desire for control. Many people mistake this disruption for courage. They believe that forcing awareness is a sign of strength. In reality, it is often a refusal to tolerate ambiguity. Consciousness prefers certainty, even if that certainty is premature. It would rather have a partial explanation than sit with unresolved tension. But unresolved tension is precisely where deeper truths gestate. Some truths are dangerous when made conscious too early because they activate defenses that are not yet flexible. Once a truth is known consciously, it cannot be unknown. The psyche must then reorganize around it. If the structures required for that reorganization are not in place, the mind compensates through denial, projection, or obsession. The truth becomes a fixation rather than a source of integration. This is why excessive self-analysis often leads to stagnation. People dig into themselves relentlessly, exposing layer after layer, assuming that awareness alone will produce change. Instead, they become trapped in loops of insight without transformation. They know more, but they are not different. Consciousness has reached its limit, but the person keeps forcing it, mistaking intensity for depth. There is also a moral arrogance hidden in the demand for full consciousness. It assumes that the conscious mind knows best, that it has the right to oversee every aspect of the psyche. This ignores the intelligence of unconscious processes. Much of psychological growth happens without conscious supervision. Habits shift, values realign. Emotional responses soften. All of this can occur without explicit awareness, and often more effectively that way. When a truth is ready for consciousness, it arrives differently. It does not feel shocking or destabilizing. It feels inevitable. It fits. The individual recognizes it not as an intrusion, but as something that has already been lived internally. Consciousness then names what has already taken shape. In this case, awareness consolidates change instead of attempting to initiate it. The discipline then is not to uncover everything, but to respect timing, to tolerate not knowing, to allow certain truths to remain in the background, influencing behavior quietly rather than demanding immediate articulation. This requires humility. It means accepting that the conscious mind is not the ruler of the psyche, but a participant within a much larger system. Not every truth belongs to consciousness, because consciousness is not the final destination of psychological life. It is a tool, not a container for all reality. Some truths must remain unspoken, unnamed, and even partially unknown until the person has grown enough to house them without distortion, collapse, or premature. Certainty, the moment you explain a powerful insight, it often loses its force. And most people never notice why the speech is often treated as harmless release. Say what you feel, express what you think, get it out of your system. This advice sounds healthy, even therapeutic, but it hides a subtle cost that few people recognize. Speech is not neutral expression. Speech is expenditure. Every time something inner is spoken, a certain amount of psychic energy is released, redirected, or lost. Inner experiences carry charge. Thoughts, realizations, intentions, and emotions generate momentum while they remain internal. They push the personality toward action, change, or reorganization. This energy is not infinite. It concentrates around what has not yet been resolved. When inner material is spoken prematurely, that concentration dissolves. The mind feels relief, but the underlying drive weakens. This is why people often feel strangely empty after explaining something deeply personal. The relief of being heard fades quickly, replaced by a sense of depletion. Truth did not disappear, but its force did. What once compelled movement inward has been converted into language, and language, by its nature, simplifies and externalizes. Something alive becomes something discussed. Speech creates the illusion of completion. The moment an experience is named, the mind treats it as processed, even if nothing has changed behaviorally. This is a dangerous shortcut. The individual feels as though work has been done simply because words were exchanged. In reality, the essential transformation has been postponed or abandoned. Energy that could have fueled change has been spent on articulation. This dynamic is especially visible with intentions and plans. People who speak extensively about what they will do often struggle to do it. The act of speaking releases the motivational tension that would otherwise push them into action. The psyche mistakes verbal declaration for accomplishment. What should have remained charged with potential is neutralized through exposure. The same mechanism applies to insights. A realization that emerges quietly can reorganize perception over time. It alters priorities, reshapes reactions, and influences choices. But when that insight is immediately shared, explained, or justified, it loses depth. The individual shifts from inhabiting the insight to performing it. The center of gravity moves outward, away from inner transformation and towards social response. Speech also makes inner material vulnerable. Once spoken, it enters a field of other minds, each with its own projections, misunderstandings, and limitations. The original meaning becomes distorted. The speaker is then forced to defend, clarify, or retract something that was never meant to exist externally in that form. This defensive process consumes additional energy, further draining the original source. There is a reason why certain experiences feel diminished when described. Language is linear. Inner life is not. When something complex is reduced to words, much of its richness is lost. The speaker senses this loss intuitively. What was once vivid becomes dull. What was once powerful becomes ordinary. The psychic energy that animated it disperses. This does not mean speech is always harmful. It means speech requires discipline. There is a difference between expression that integrates and expression that dissipates. When speech emerges after inner material has stabilized, it can reinforce clarity. When it emerges before stabilization, it acts as a leak. The psyche vents pressure instead of using it to restructure itself. Modern culture encourages constant expression. Silence is treated as suppression. Privacy is mistaken for avoidance. This creates a population that speaks constantly but transforms slowly. People externalize everything, leaving little energy for inner work. They confuse articulation with growth and communication with resolution. Containment is an unfamiliar skill. It involves holding inner material without immediate release. This holding generates tension, and tension is uncomfortable. But tension is also productive. It forces the psyche to adapt. It strengthens internal structures. When speech is delayed, energy is conserved and redirected inward, where it can produce lasting change. The strongest individuals are not those who express the most, but those who know what to keep inside. They allow insights to deepen before sharing them. They let intentions mature before announcing them. They understand that not every inner movement needs an audience. By preserving psychic energy rather than leaking it through constant speech, they cultivate a quiet intensity that reshapes their behavior, their presence, and their lives without explanation. People don't attack your truth because it's false. They attack it because it exposes them. There is a misconception that truth, once spoken, can be easily received. We assume that others, if willing, can simply absorb what we reveal and respond appropriately. This assumption is dangerously naive. Most people cannot hold another person's truth, not because they are cruel or ignorant, but because the truth of another mind often challenges the foundations of their own. Every individual constructs a personal reality designed to maintain stability. Beliefs, habits, and unconscious compromises form a network that keeps daily life manageable. When confronted with someone else's truth, especially a truth that is raw, complex, or uncomfortably collides with that network, the result is cognitive and emotional disruption. People react not to the truth itself, but to the tension it creates within their own frameworks. This inability to hold truth manifests in predictable ways. Some will dismiss it outright, labeling the speaker as extreme, dramatic, or wrong. Others attempt to neutralize it with humor, irony, or ridicule, as if reducing the truth to a joke can protect them from confrontation. Many unconsciously twist the truth to fit their expectations, creating a distorted version that reassures them without requiring internal adjustment. rarely does the truth land intact. The difficulty lies in the defensive mechanisms that protect the mind from overload. True insights often provoke discomfort because they mirror what the listener avoids within themselves. When someone witnesses another person articulating a truth they have not faced, it acts as a reflection of their own unresolved conflicts. This reflection triggers resistance, often expressed as judgment, anger, or withdrawal. The listener's inability to contain the truth is a defense, not a failure of character. Even when the listener is well-intentioned, they may lack the psychological capacity to integrate another person's truth. Integration requires self-reflection, emotional flexibility, and a willingness to confront previously suppressed material. Most people avoid this process because it is uncomfortable and destabilizing. It demands a temporary surrender of ego, toleration of ambiguity, and the endurance of cognitive tension. Few are prepared to do this consistently. The speaker bears a burden in these interactions. Sharing truth presumes a receptivity that rarely exists. When the truth is resisted, misinterpreted, or weaponized, the speaker experiences frustration, isolation, or even aggression. Their insight, instead of inspiring transformation, is met with deflection or hostility. This is not because the truth lacks value, but because the listener cannot hold it without their own psyche bending under the weight. There is also a subtle danger in revealing too much. Some truths are so potent that they destabilize not only the listener perception, but also their emotional equilibrium. Exposure to uncontained truths can provoke anxiety, defensiveness, and projection. The speaker may unintentionally become a catalyst for disruption, carrying responsibility for the discomfort they could neither prevent nor control. The capacity to hold truth is therefore a rare quality. It is not learned superficially through education or social etiquette. It requires self-mastery, the ability to tolerate tension, and the discipline to reflect rather than react. Individuals capable of this are often underestimated because their strength is silent and internal, not performative. They can witness contradictions, paradoxes, and complex realities without the need to flatten or reject them. They carry truth without being consumed by it. Because most people cannot hold another person's truth, silence and discretion become strategic virtues. Revealing inner truths indiscriminately risks misinterpretation, resistance, and emotional backlash. There's a wisdom in waiting for the right container, someone who can truly listen without distorting or deflecting. Until such a container exists, revealing certain insights is not generosity, it is recklessness. Those who understand it cultivate discernment. They do not share insights to gain validation or approval. They understand that not every audience is capable of comprehension, and that forcing truth upon the unprepared can have consequences. Their approach balances courage with prudence. They recognize the power of their own truth, and they protect it from being diluted, attacked, or misused. Ultimately, most people are not equipped to hold the psychic and emotional weight of another person's truth. Resistance is not always conscious, nor is misunderstanding necessarily malicious. It is a structural limitation of human perception and integration. Recognizing this fact is a measure of maturity, teaching us that discretion, timing, and selectivity are as essential to truth as courage itself. Understanding this principle reshapes how we relate to others. It changes what we choose to reveal, how we express insight, and how we navigate social reality. It teaches patience, strategy, and restraint. It also highlights the rarity of those who can genuinely witness another as inner reality without distortion, judgment, or collapse. Those individuals capable of holding truth are invaluable, but they are few. The weight of another's truth is not light. It is a responsibility, a challenge, and a test of integrity. Few are ready to carry it, and fewer still can do so without projecting their own unresolved material onto it. This is the hidden cost of honesty in human relationships, and the reason why revealing everything is not always a sign of courage or virtue. When you understand that most people cannot hold another person's truth, you begin to measure interactions differently. You recognize the limits of social receptivity and the strategic necessity of containment. You understand that power, influence, and transformation are not measured by how much you tell, but by how much can be received safely and integrated effectively. Silence isn't weakness. It's the discipline of holding truth until it strengthens you instead of leaking out. Silence is often misunderstood. In a world obsessed with expression, confession, and disclosure, remaining quiet is frequently interpreted as weakness, avoidance, or repression. People assume that if something is not said, It is denied or suppressed. This is a critical misunderstanding. Silence is not repression. Silence, when chosen consciously, is a form of containment, discipline, and internal sovereignty. Repression occurs when the psyche pushes material out of awareness involuntarily. Thoughts, feelings, and impulses are buried because they are painful, unacceptable, or overwhelming. The individual may not even recognize that this material exists, or they may pretend it does not exist, using rationalizations or distractions. Repression is unconscious. It is forced, defensive, and often destructive. Over time, repressed material exerts pressure, leaks indirectly, or manifests as neurotic behavior. Silence, in contrast, is deliberate. It is the decision to hold, observe, and understand inner material without immediately externalizing it. It does not deny reality, it preserves energy. It allows complex or volatile truths to mature internally before they interact with the external world. Silence protects psychic structure, preventing premature exposure from dissipate energy, provoking misunderstanding or destabilizing relationships. It is a strategic act of self-governance. The act of speaking is not neutral. Words carry weight, energy, and consequence. Every declaration externalizes something that previously existed as potential or force within the self. When inner material is too raw, too complex, or too socially sensitive, releasing it prematurely can be harmful. It may provoke defensiveness in others, misinterpretation, or even personal regret. Silence allows the psyche to integrate insights gradually, consolidating understanding before risking exposure. This principle applies to emotions, intentions, and insights alike. Anger, for example, can be explosive if spoken immediately. Resentment may feel justified, but verbalizing it without reflection often worsens conflict. By remaining silent, the individual gains mastery over the impulse, assessing the energy behind it, considering timing, and evaluating consequences. The act of containment is not avoidance, it is preparation. Silence also fosters depth. When material is internalized, it continues to influence perception, decision-making, and behavior unconsciously. The person who does not articulate every thought or feeling has the opportunity to live with it, observe its nuances, and understand its interconnection. This incubation allows insights to mature into wisdom, rather than remain raw observations or declarative statements. In contrast, immediate articulation often flattens complexity, turning rich experiences into simplistic narratives. Many people conflate silence with repression because it is invisible to observers. In social contexts, speaking is valued over listening, disclosure over discretion. Those who remain quiet may be judged as hiding something, being weak, or refusing to engage. But this external perception misses the internal reality. Silence is active, not passive. It is an intentional stance, a conscious decision to preserve integrity, energy, and focus. Silence requires courage. It is easier to release thoughts, vent emotions, or declare truths than to hold them internally with composure. The person who chooses silence confronts discomfort directly, tolerating tension and uncertainty without externalizing it. This discipline strengthens the psyche, cultivates patience, and allows for deliberate action rather than impulsive reaction. In this sense, silence is a mark of psychological maturity. Moreover, silence can serve as a form of protection for oneself and for others. Some truths, when spoken, can harm, inflame, or destabilize. Not all knowledge is meant to be immediately shared. By withholding expression until the appropriate time, the individual exercises judgment, ethical awareness, and respect for the readiness of others to receive the truth. This is not repression, it is containment, and it requires insight and restraint. There is also an energetic dimension to silence. Inner experiences, ideas, and emotions possess vitality while they remain unexpressed. When expressed prematurely, this energy disperses. Silence preserves the potential, allowing it to fuel creativity, decision-making, and transformation internally. Speaking before the inner material is fully integrated can result in energy loss, emotional exhaustion, or misunderstanding. Holding the material quietly maintains its potency. The distinction between repression and silence is central to understanding psychological health. Repression burdens the unconscious, creating pressure that manifests unpredictably. Silence channels energy consciously, supporting integration and internal development. One leads to neurotic leakage, the other fosters mastery and self-control. Those who understand this difference recognize that not everything needs to be spoken to exist fully or to influence behavior. Silence is also a form of authority. It communicates self-possession without aggression, presence without exhibition. When words are chosen carefully after reflection, they carry weight and precision. By contrast, unchecked speech often signals dependency on validation, impulsivity, or lack of internal control. Mastery of silence signals mastery over self, over impulses, and over the timing of revelation. By embracing silence as containment rather than suppression, the individual navigates life with greater clarity, strength, and discretion. It allows for reflection, integration, and strategic action. It cultivates patience, fortifies internal structures, and preserves the energy needed for transformation. Silence is not the absence of courage or honesty, it is the careful allocation of psychic force to ensure that when expression occurs, it is both deliberate and effective.